This episode of Unqualified Opinions is brought to you by Hirechain. Your next hire could come from anywhere: a recruiter, a job board, a referral network, or a conference. Hirechain manages hundreds of candidate sources for you, so you only see relevant applications and can focus on picking the best person for your team. On average, our customers fill open roles faster and 30% cheaper than with traditional recruiters. Leading companies like The Graph and Messari already use Hirechain. So get your time back. Talk to Hirechain today and hire the best, fast. Visit hirechain.io/Messari for prioritized onboarding. This podcast is meant for informational purposes only and is not meant to serve as investment advice. Hosts and guests may hold cryptocurrencies discussed in this episode. Opinions expressed may not reflect the opinions of Messari.
Stablecoins are one of the primary crypto use cases that have ascended the realm of mere speculation. Trillions of dollars of value have settled through stablecoins and their asset networks just this year, but the vast majority of the profits from holding their underlying collateral is accruing to a single company, Tether. In Q2 of 2024, Tether reported a net income larger than Visa, MasterCard, and Goldman Sachs, and with only 125 employees. As you'd expect, there are a number of challengers, and they've also had good years. So I dove deep into the year stables have had and can now give an update on the major categories of stablecoins, the protocols rising within them, their design choices, and the trade-offs they face in attempting to breach Tether's moat. I'm Andrew Dyer, and here's the story.
Join us at Mainnet 2024, Messari's premier annual conference in New York City from September 30th through October 2nd. Don't miss this exclusive opportunity to engage with industry leaders, explore emerging trends in crypto and AI, and network with top investors and innovators. Benefit from a 20% discount with code MessariPod when you register at mainnet.events. For a prominent presence, contact events@messari.io. Come experience the future of crypto at Mainnet 2024.
Hey Andrew, great to have you on the pod.
Hi Marcia, thanks for having me again.
That stat that you just threw out there is mind blowing to me. But before we get into some of that, why don't you tell us a bit about the rise of stablecoins these past few years and Tether's place in it?
Yeah, stablecoins have been a hot topic, and their growth has been pretty astounding. According to Artemis, there's more than 20 million monthly active stablecoin addresses, which has doubled since 2 years ago, and around 50% of all on-chain transaction volumes are now stablecoins. This growth has been pretty uncorrelated with broader trading and more speculative activity, so people are really using stablecoins to store and transfer value, for cross-border payments and remittances, access to yields, currency substitution in emerging markets, and various other use cases as well. The thing is, at around 120 billion in supply, Tether has largely cornered the market with a 70% dominance. And with short-term rates still near the highest levels they've been in a decade, Tether is printing billions of dollars every quarter. It puts it on par with traditional financial giants like Wells Fargo, Visa, and others.
With that context, right? How have competitors responded, and what type of challenges have emerged?
So the market obviously sees this profitability, and new competitors are flooding into this space to take a piece of the pie. The goal of my piece was to look at who the main contenders are in both the centralized and decentralized world. What design choices have they made for those protocols building on chain, and what types of trade-offs are they facing? And I basically grouped these into 4 main categories outside of centralized alternatives, and there's some overlap in between them. But categories are treasury-backed stablecoins, synthetic stablecoins, fully decentralized stablecoins, and novel designs or mechanisms.
So let's start with centralized alternatives. Do any of them have a shot at competing with Tether and Circle?
Yeah, it's hard. Most of these alternatives generally just mimic the USDT or USDC model, either with more or less transparency. And thus far, only FDUSD, which is run by First Digital, and PayPal's PiUSD have really gained any traction, like above, say, $1 billion in market cap. And FDUSD has really only been a substitute for Binance's old stablecoin BUSD after they ran into some legal trouble with the NYDFS. So Binance put on zero trading fees on this new stablecoin called FDUSD and multiple trading pairs with that stablecoin, which has attracted a lot of the volume. And for PayPal, PiUSD has gained some traction after expanding to Solana, and they have some boosted incentives on Camino, but it's really unclear if this growth driven by incentives will be sticky after those subsidies run out. And more generally, it's pretty tough to compete with USDT and USDC on distribution, how many spot trading pairs there are, and just in general being used as collateral on exchanges, along with also generally better liquidity on those exchanges.
And how about the more decentralized protocols like Sky that uses treasuries? What new stuff is going on in that category?
So treasury backed stables, and I use this broadly, they just take treasury bills or overnight reverse repo agreements and they pay out the yield in some form usually. Sky, which has rebranded from Maker, launched its new stablecoin USDS. Sky obviously also holds crypto native collateral as well, but they've made a big push into treasuries and other RWAs. USDS thus far has expanded Sky's stablecoin supply by around 10%. And going forward, we're going to see if their star farming meta pays off for them in expanding that supply even more. I covered two other protocols. One's called Usual, and it basically tries to port the Tether model and just pay out all of the yield from their treasury bills to the users. And right now they're doing some airdrop campaigns, so you'll get paid in what's called pills, and those will eventually convert to Usual tokens, which will govern the protocol. Now, that model of just investing in treasuries and paying out yield to users is basically the opposite of another new protocol called Agora. Agora and AUSD take a bit of a different approach where they actually don't believe that stablecoins should be yield products at all. And the issuer should basically take all the collateral yield to incentivize partners like exchanges, apps, fintech companies, or even banks to enhance the distribution of that stablecoin. And their whole pitch is that eventually this yields benefits on those platforms to the end users. I sort of like this model because it focuses on accessibility and making that product, that stablecoin, as available to as many people as possible. And I think that might be something that other stablecoins miss when they attempt to just copy paste the Tether model while paying out yield to users. But all of these protocols will be pretty reliant on rates going forward. So, even Tether's 5 billion in quarterly profits could get cut in half if we go through a standard rate cut cycle, and those protocols are exposed to that variability as well.
This year, we also saw the rise of Ethena, which grew to more than $3 billion in supply. Has anything changed with synthetic stablecoins like USDE and others?
Yeah, so the cash and carry trade of going long some spot collateral like BTC and ETH, and then short futures to create that delta neutral position and maintain the stablecoin peg that way. That worked great earlier this year when funding rates were super high and the market was getting levered long around the ETF approvals and those launches. Um, that's partially why Athena was able to scale so rapidly to above $3 billion. But since then, USDE's lost about a billion in supply or so as those yields have compressed to even below what, say, staked DAI or now USDS is paying out. But other protocols are kind of experimenting with the Athena model now. Elixir's DEUSD uses a similar model, but it tries to shift assets into different collateral as the funding environment gets more negative. And it also is trying to make use of its various partner integrations with perpetual dexes to more widely distribute the stablecoin, which I think is a good model. There's also Resolve, which tokenizes its reserve fund with a 2-token model. So users who want to take on more risk by potentially getting hit during periods of negative funding can earn higher yield on the secondary token called RLP. All of these stablecoins in the synthetic space will be pretty dependent on the funding environment and how much leverage people want to take on majors going forward.
And how have protocols that have focused on a more decentralized ethos or vision fared against all this competition?
The stablecoins focus more on decentralization. They try to be as transparent as possible. They also try to minimize human intervention with regards to how the protocol works as much as possible. And the poster child of that outside of DAI was probably LUSD, which is part of the Liquidity protocol. The problem with LUSD in this recent era was it wasn't paying out any yield to users in a time where stablecoins like USDE were paying out a lot of yield. And so people were selling and borrowing LUSD in order to buy these other yield paying stablecoins. And so Liquidity, the protocol behind LUSD, decided to shift to a new stablecoin called Bold that allows users to set their own interest rates. So instead of users with the lowest amount of collateral being redeemed first, users with the lowest interest rate that they set themselves will be redeemed first. And the whole idea there is that a more market-driven approach might be more competitive and be able to supply higher yields to end users. But on net, the stablecoins that have focused on decentralization, like LUSD, some like CRV USD, they haven't really seen that much traction in the market. One of the few exceptions there being Aave's Go stablecoin. That's seen more steady growth. And I think being tied to an already popular ecosystem might be the value prop that some of these stablecoins need to get larger scale. For example, if you're bullish on Aave and you're staked Aave holder, you can mint Go against your assets at a discounted rate. So that type of value prop might be needed for some of these new protocols to actually get past, say, the $100 million market cap mark.
Your last category, novel designs. What do these protocols try to bring to the table?
The novel designs or mechanisms usually try to use some sort of flywheel to attract users, or they use other design choices to attempt to increase capital efficiency. So the typical collateral deposition model that Dai and USDS use is you put $150 in, you can mint $100 worth of stablecoins at max. And below that, you risk getting liquidated. New protocols like Dyad try to increase the efficiency towards that 1-to-1 ratio by introducing a second token called Kerosene, which grants you the right to mint more Dyad against the excess collateral in the system. I mentioned a few other protocols. There's inverse finance, which has been around for a while. Instead of having variable interest rates, they introduce fixed rate borrowing, where you buy a separate token that gives you the right to borrow for a fixed amount of time. And there's another protocol called Dinero, which is launching a stablecoin called PXUSD soon. That's going to integrate into their liquid staking token ecosystem. And they eventually want to use their stablecoin as tips on their RPC instead of using ETH. All these involve flywheels where increased usage or demand for borrowing against collateral ultimately leads to higher yields to stablecoin holders, and that attracts more users. But the flywheels are a double-edged sword, as capital can flee a system just as quickly as it enters. Both Dyad and inverse finance have experienced some rapid expansions and rapid contractions in TVL in recent months. So that's a testament to the variability in these types of protocols that make use of flywheels.
So, what would you say are some of the key takeaways from your analysis for protocols or companies looking to launch new stablecoins?
Generally, you have to compete on a bunch of different metrics. You need to compete on stability, accessibility, yield, liquidity, and deep spot markets. Copy pasting the Tether model really isn't enough to compete. You need partner integrations and you need liquidity across both centralized and decentralized exchange venues. I do think having an ecosystem with its own value proposition and integrating a new stablecoin into that may make its growth more reliable and sticky. But really widening accessibility is going to be key to competing with the likes of USDT and USDC.
Any closing remarks?
The space is really, it's an exciting time for the stablecoin space. It's really expanding rapidly, and new protocols are being built out every single day. Just this past 2 weeks, we've seen the former head of USDC at Circle. They just launched a stablecoin native exchange called TrueX. Another startup called Bridge is just raised $58 million to offer stablecoin payment APIs and infrastructure for B2B payments. And more traditional exchanges like Revolut and infra providers like BitGo are also launching their own stablecoins. So I think there will be a lot more infrastructure companies launching in this vertical going forward. And it's a really exciting time. So Messari will be watching and covering these developments closely.
Well, loved reading your report and chatting about it in a podcast. Thanks very much, Andrew.
Thanks for having me again. This episode was produced by Steve Bichimer, based on my report on experiments in stablecoins for Messari Enterprise in September 2024. To read more about Tether, Circle, and stablecoins, please consider subscribing to Messari Pro at messari.io.